Now coming in motion. And on first and goal, it's over to Tony, and he tiptoes and tight ropes for a touchdown. His first NFL touchdown. First touchdown.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Patrick Mahomes has thrown more touchdowns in his first 72 career games than any other quarterback in NFL history has thrown in their first 75 career games. We've talked about it before. It's the greatest start we've ever seen to a quarterback in NFL history. This is KCSN Update, your daily Chiefs podcast and video from us here at KC Sports Network. I'm BJ Kissel, founder of KCSN and former Chiefs insider and sideline reporter. One of my favorite videos each week is the Monday KCSN Update because we are going to be joined by my buddy, ESPN's Matt Miller, for our Stock Up, Stock Down report. And before we bring on Matt to talk about all the guys that he's feeling really good about and maybe a few that he's a little concerned about right now for the Chiefs, before we bring Matt on, here's a quick word from our friends over at DraftKings. NFL Sundays are only getting better, and so are the incredible offers at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. And check this out. Right now, everyone can earn up to a 100% boost with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same-game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, player props, point totals, and more. Anytime scores is a lot of fun. It's my personal favorite. You can go across the NFL with it, and you always feel like you got a shot. And with payouts bigger than ever, DraftKings Sportsbook is my go-to when betting on the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code KCSN and place a $5 pregame moneyline bet to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL with code KCSN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, Chiefs Kingdom, let's welcome on ESPN's Matt Miller. You can find his work, obviously, at ESPN, and you can find him on social media at NFL Draft Scout. Matt, how goes it this Monday morning, my friend?
It's going well. Maybe not as great as Chiefs fans are feeling this morning, sitting atop the AFC. It's funny how there's the early season panic. You lose to the Colts, you lose to the Bills, the sky is falling. And here we are you guys are at 7-2, 4-1 at home with home field advantage. Very possible, if not likely even. So, I think you've worked for teams, BJ, and you've covered teams. This mid-season's dangerous, and every win's a good win in November. It really is. So a lot of people are like, I saw someone yesterday, being a Missouri resident, I saw someone yesterday be like, I'm so tired of the Chiefs not being able to put people away and dominate. And I wanted to comment, but I didn't because I care about my sanity, that winning by 10 points in November is a damn good thing, especially, to have a 20-7 lead at halftime. That game was definitely not as close as the score seemed at the end, but that's the type of game where you walk away and you're like, hey, we had some key injuries, which I know we'll talk about, and we won by 10. I'll take that. I'll take that every day.
Yeah, there's always going to be storylines following the games, and there is no shortage of storylines coming out of this one. But to your point, do I think the Chiefs are going to finish the regular season 15-2? To be honest, no. I'm that weird fan, and I understand. I talk out of both sides of my mouth. I predict them to go, 12-5, 13-4, something like that. But every Sunday you ask me they're going to win. I'm like, yeah, they're going to win. I predict them to go 17-0 on Sundays Saturdays when we're talking about pregame or whatever. But I fully expect, there to be another game that they drop, and it doesn't necessarily, we didn't think it was gonna be the Colts game, to your point that you just brought up. So any given Sunday, survive in advance at this point, try to avoid major injuries. And to your point, we'll talk about that. Hopefully they aren't major or lingering for the Chiefs, not just because of, obviously talking about Juju Smith-Schuster, not talking about just what he can do on the field. You think about him as a person first, especially as scary as that was. And I know we'll get into that, but let's start on a more positive note and your stock up reports, because I have a feeling I know at least who one of the usual suspects is going to be
Yeah.
here on the stock up.
I was say it's Monday. It's stock up. That means we're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes. Was that not like the quietest 4-touchdown, 300+ yard game that he's probably put together? I honestly didn't realize until I looked last night to start prepping for this video, BJ, to be like, and I watched that entire game. My son and I sat down, watched the whole game together, and it was like, they won and Mahomes played well, but it was a quietly great performance from him. And I told you at ESPN, we're doing our midseason awards. I put together my MVP ballot, and right at the top is Patrick Mahomes. And I will go as far as to say it's Mahomes, and then there's a gap because Josh Allen has not been playing well. And I don't think a wide receiver like Justin Jefferson can win an MVP award. Micah Parsons is certainly playing himself into a Defensive Player of the Year award. But MVP, I just don't know how it could be anyone but Pat right now. MVP Pat, it's just renamed the award at this point. But he is playing very well. And I know, like you, it's kind of tongue in cheek, like more touchdowns in 75 games. I was like 72. Like it's funny, but it's also it's remarkable. And to put together four more yesterday, he's just on a clip that I think Patrick has entered that like Brady Manning style, where even when they're great, people are so used to it that it's like, oh, he threw 4 more touchdowns today. And it's like, no, you don't realize, like, he threw 4 more touchdowns today. How well he's playing. I mean, he threw a pick yesterday, but I still think it's efficient. The ball is going out to 4 different receivers caught those touchdowns, by the way. So the ball is getting spread around. And I do think one of my favorite Mahomes things is that if you come at him or his guys, you're going to piss him off. And all that's going to happen is he's going to play even better. So after the hit on Juju and then the hit on MVS by Andre Sisco, who, damn it, got that interception to Mahomes, that you love the symmetry in football. After those hits, Mahomes was not that he needs extra motivation, but he was a little bit more fired up. And I think the whole team was. I think there was this idea of, okay, now you've woken us up a little bit. And just another great game from Patrick.
Yeah, he finished. Let me bring up the final stats here. Patrick Mahomes finished the game against the Jaguars, 26 of 35 for 331 yards. That was 9.5 yards per attempt,
pretty good.
with 4 touchdowns and an interception with a passer rating of 129.6, a QBR rating of 92.3. And very quiet performance. And you look through some of the, the post-game notes, and I always shout out the Chiefs communications and their PR department, because those poor people have to look up these records and the pacing numbers and all of that. And it's a lot of work when you've got a guy that is putting up the kind of numbers that we're seeing from Patrick Mahomes. But he's tied now with Dan Marino for the most, 3 touchdown passing performances in a player's first 75 career starts. He's already got 16 games in his first 72 starts. Yeah. I mean, 1 out of every 4 games that Patrick Mahomes plays, he throws at least 4 touchdown passes on average. Like, can contextualize.
That's so wild.
It's almost like Chiefs fans, a lot of Chiefs fans probably get tired of hearing these things. And there's a faction of Chiefs fans that is kind of like me, where it's like, I love this stuff because I don't want to normalize this. We talk about it all the time, contextualizing it and not normalizing the greatness that we're seeing.
When you guys won the Super Bowl, and you know all my friends, because we're friends, all my friends are like, we're going to win 5 of these. And I was like, yeah, I grew up a Niners fan, and I was lucky that they actually won 4 when I was young, but it was spread out over like 15 years. It was like, let's just pump the brakes. Like you say, you want to enjoy the moments. And it's okay to have expectations. It's okay to expect Mahomes to be great and to be in the MVP conversation every year, which in turn makes the Chiefs a competitor every year for the Super Bowl. But I also think you have to stop and smell the roses a little bit. And because the 15 years are going to go by quickly, believe it or not. Yeah. And so not that you want to look back and be like, damn, that week 11 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars or whatever it was, week 10, whatever week it is at this point, but I think just to appreciate the moments a little bit and not get so wrapped up in the expectations. If nickel's worth of free advice from some old men right here, enjoy the moments a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, these are the stories you're going to be telling your grandkids about. You don't want to think about it now, because think about your grandparents and the stories they tell you. And it's like, oh, whatever. Like, you're going to be talking about the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. But it's special to watch. I'd say the one, thing that Chiefs fans like also not take for granted, besides the players that we're seeing, is that the relevance. It's one thing to go out and win a Super Bowl. It's another thing to be league-wide relevant. You turn on a national TV game, they're talking about your quarterback. They're commercials with your quarterback all over it. This
Every
commercial with your head coach. Hilarious.
primetime game
Commercial.
is your team now. You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, you got it's
And people
spoiled.
Yeah. People like you, these draft analysts, and I think you know better. I shouldn't lump you into everybody
Thank
else.
you. Yeah.
Anytime a college kid makes some crazy play outside the pocket, they're like, "Oh, that looks like Patrick Mahomes." Like,
No,
don't. Then Chiefs fans get upset.
Yeah.
Like that is all part of this experience and what we get to enjoy and watching this dude go out and play football. I will say the one negative thing with having Patrick Mahomes, it's kind of ruined football in a lot of ways because I was watching the Vikings game and Kirk Cousins, very good, solid football team. Kirk Cousins, solid quarterback. There was a time at which Chiefs fans would have clamored for a player like Kirk Cousins. And now you watch him and you're like, well, why can't he just run over there and throw it back the other way across, 20 yards down the field on a dime? It's kind of, he makes it look so easy that it ruins watching other players play.
Without a doubt, for me, it has almost ruined the evaluation process sometimes because you forget that because mechanics don't matter to Patrick doesn't mean they don't matter for everyone else, and you find yourself thinking, well, this one guy can do that. So can't everyone just like drift 15 yards from the line of scrimmage, stringing out defensive tackles and then, find their Hall of Fame tight end 60 yards down the field? No, unfortunately they can't. It's rare what he's able to do. And I don't know that we can spend 20 minutes talking about how great Patrick is. He knows it. Everyone knows it. It's fun for you guys. I'm excited. Just to see the way this offense is evolving, to see Kadarius Toney get involved yesterday, to see Isaiah Pacheco become the lead back, which did Clyde play? I don't even know if Clyde played yesterday.
He had 2 targets, but he didn't have a carry. And Coach Reed said after the game that it just worked out that way. And that wasn't necessarily the plan. Right.
Okay.
But this was kind of brought up and teased before the Niners game that Pacheco was getting the start. And then he said after the game, I didn't know I was getting the start. Nobody told me that, even though Ian Rappaport, I think, or Schefter, one of those guys, tweeted it out.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on to the next stock up because I think we're talking about some of the young guys here.
Yeah, I think we have to talk, BJ, about the 2022 rookie class. And, Trent McDuffie finally getting on the field after an injury looked very good yesterday. And a lot of people say, well, it's the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence had a pretty good game, quietly good game. Yeah. And I thought McDuffie showed up. He held his own. He did not look like a rookie. And he definitely didn't look like a rookie who missed most of the season up to this point. So I think that's encouraging. Joshua Williams, we talked about last week, might be the best tackling corner in football. I love the way he plays. Your guy, George Karlaftis, played his best game on Sunday, I think. Yeah. We're seeing the athleticism. I think the effort is absolutely there. But then also to see Pacheco, lead the team in rushing, to have 16 carries and be trusted as kind of a bell cow, to be, featured, special teams, pass game, run game. And no, Sky Moore has not popped yet. No. I think he's being asked to do a lot in a very deep receiver room, but we're probably going to see it next week. He's probably going to have to answer the bell a little bit, depending on how folks like Juju and MVS are moving forward. Mecole Hardman missed the game yesterday. Yeah. So I think Sky is someone that is going to have to continue to step up. But for all of being a general manager is hard. There's a reason I like to pretend to be one on TV instead of being one. It's a hard job. And I think Veach, we can all sit here and talk about Breland Speaks or Tano Passignon or Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but what they found in this 2022 class, when all the talk last offseason, BJ, was about the Broncos got Russell Wilson and the Raiders got Devontae Adams and the Chargers got Khalil Mack. And it's like, none of that shit matters today because the Kansas City Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes and they have Travis Kelce and they have a better team right now. It's a more, it's a fuller roster as opposed to, like we've talked about before, that 3-headed attack. So I think Veach deserves a lot of credit. He's not going to win Executive of the Year. I can go ahead and spoil that for you guys. Howie Roseman is he probably already has the trophy in his house right now. But I think Veach and his whole crew, to lose Ryan Poles to the Chicago Bears and still put together the draft that they did, says a lot.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with what you just said. And the one area, talking about Brett Veach and what they did during the offseason. The other big conversation was pass rush. And we're talking about George Karlaftis. And I know I'd stated very clearly that I thought he was going to break DT sack record. There's still a chance, Matt. It, right? He just needs a couple big games, but I will not going to hit that one most likely. But I will say it doesn't take away from the impact that he is making. He is tied with Aiden Hutchinson for the most pressures by a rookie defensive lineman. He's got the most batted passes, I think, by rookie defensive lineman. George Karlaftis is making plays for the defense, and he is making an impact as a rookie at a position that you don't always see an impact unless you're talking about a top 10 pick, one of those first 2 or 3 edge rushers that are taken in the draft. But we talked so much in the offseason about the Chiefs pass rush in general. I mean, last year they finished with 29 sacks as a team in the regular season in 17 games. Through 9 games, they have 27 sacks right now, led by Chris Jones with his 7. But it's the, addition by, bringing a lot of dudes in. Carlos Dunlap has made an impact. All of those guys are making Chris's job easier. Colin Saunders is stepping up. Karlaftis is obviously making plays. You've got a lot of different dudes, and obviously we know Steve Spagnuolo is going to blitz the house a lot, so you're going to get some DBs with some sack numbers. But Brett Veach's job and what he's done, not just by bringing in, Karlaftis and drafting him, the totality of what he's done on the defensive side of the ball with the rookies and some of the free agents they picked up, it's been phenomenal. It's made a huge difference. We've seen it over the last few weeks.
No, absolutely. And you take me right into my final stock up, and that is the defensive line, namely Chris Jones, 1.5 sacks again on Sunday against a mobile quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. I think the team had 5 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss. That's fantastic against Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. That's a good Sunday. So, but the D line, you're right. I mean, Carlos Dunlap, congrats to him, getting over 100 career sacks now. I think Chris Jones I love Aaron Donald. I think Chris Jones is playing better than him this year. Not saying he's better, but I think he's playing better than him so far this year. And, I thought when Frank Clark got suspended that there was going to be a much bigger drop-off defensively than there has been. And I think that's a credit to Spags. It's a credit to guys like Carlos Dunlap. It's a credit to Karlaftis. You've mentioned it. Colin Saunders is playing like a man possessed the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So it's almost like how the receiver room has been a group effort. I think we're seeing that from the pass rush. And it's phenomenal. I think I think the Chiefs defense is much better than people realize on a national level. You see the Chiefs and you think, oh, well, it's Mahomes. They're going to go out and outscore us. Well, yes, but the defense is also playing very well right now. And it's a great sign to be, again, second half of the season and your defense is clicking. Super Bowl year, that was not happening. It was like December before everything clicked. So I think you got to be happy about where the D is at right now.
Yeah, and shout out to Chris Jones. Anybody that was watching or listening to our post-game show from last night, kind of went on a little mini, I want to call it a rant Swan. That was not a Kent Swanson type of rant, but I did very loudly complain about the fact that Chris Jones has been as dominant as he has been this year, and he was not listed anywhere on the odds for Defensive Player of the Year until late last night going into this morning. You check out DraftKings now, he is listed with odds for Defensive Player of the Year. I think he has the 7th best odds now. Micah Parsons is the odds-on favorite to run away with that award. And that makes sense. For good reason. I don't think Chris Jones is going to win that award, but Chris Jones has played well enough that he should be in every national conversation about players that could be if it wasn't for Micah Parsons. Chris Jones,
first team All-Pro. I don't think, I mean, that should be a gimme, I would think, just because of where he's at and because of the success of the team. That absolutely factors in. We all know that. But again, I don't think there's a defensive tackle in the NFL who's playing better than he is right now.
All right, let's move to the stock down report, the bummer side of this, but obviously it's what we get paid to do and talk about both sides of it. And it wasn't a perfect performance. Coach Reed said after the game, they made a lot of mistakes, a lot of things they got to clean up. And the first stock down is one that I know you're going to talk about and is not a new one to this. I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. But yeah, what's your first stock down?
I have to go with Harrison Butker. And some of this, folks who follow you and I on that dying social media app, Twitter, know I tweeted about this in the game. Butker misses an extra point, and it's just, I don't understand how someone can be so good beyond 50 yards and so bad in terms of extra points. But, he's missed 2 on the year, and it is a recurring problem. Going back to the Super Bowl year where he missed 6 extra points that year. He missed a couple last year. And no, they're not coming in big spots, but how could you feel comfortable if you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you are down 7 in a game, you score a touchdown, and then you have to, it's not an afterthought anymore. It's really, truly not. And I have nothing against Harrison Butker. I've never met the guy in his life. This isn't some weird vendetta that I have. It's just concerning to me that someone who it wasn't that long ago was thought of as the second best kicker in the NFL behind Justin Tucker. And now it's like, what's going on with this guy? And it's not just the ankle injury. A lot of people want to say, oh, it's the ankle. He didn't have this ankle injury in 2020 or 2021. So it is concerning to me that it just not as automatic as you would like. And as you said, it is our job to point these things out. I'm not saying they need to draft a kicker in 2023, but I do think it is something that could become a factor as we get into later in the year and into the postseason. And you'd rather point it out in November than regret it in December or January.
This is the reason that it's concerning, and I think you're alluding to it too, is that when you talk about kicking, it's not the ankle, it's not this. So much of it is mental. This is like a golf swing.
Yeah.
And that anybody who's ever golfed even a little bit, you get a little bit off. If you're mentally thinking about something else, it doesn't take much with your body and your muscle memory to just be a little bit off to make all the difference in the world. Then you start missing a few, and then you overcorrect, and then you're going through different processes. And I trust, and I'd been around Harrison Butker a little bit, that he is so, mentally adept to what he's doing and what his body is doing, that I trust him to figure it out. But at some point it's going to creep in and become a mental issue where he's going to be thinking about it. And that's up to Dave Tobe. It's up to James Winchester. It's up to Tommy Towns. And those guys are around him all the time to help him get through this. And, I have no reason to believe that this would be the case, but this is also, we're having guys like Jan Stenerud, and Chiefs fans are like, why did he just come up? Jan Stenerud is around quite a bit. He has a relationship with Harrison Butker, and you're talking about a Pro Football Hall of Fame kicker that sometimes you could just hear or have conversations with people who understand what you're going through. And that's all you really need, is not some Joe Schmo fan on the street sending a tweet, although it's not not a bad thing, saying, hey, we believe in you, yada, yada, yada. It's another thing for Jan Stenerud, is somebody who's lined up and done the same thing to give you some advice. I don't know what it is, but it's definitely a thing now that has got to get figured out. Because to your point, whether it's an extra point to tie it, for me, it's those Chiefs are up 7, they're driving, and they've got a 35-yard field goal to take a 2-possession lead with 7 minutes left to go in the game. And it's like, you could ice the game right here. And I don't have any confidence that kind of kick will go in. 55-yarder to tie it with 2 seconds.
Probably.
Automatic. Probably going to drill it, but it's the take a 2-possession lead type deal that I can very much see happening, that I'm not confident.
And I think it's special teams have weirdly been an issue this year as well. There's been the punt return problems that it's a weekly thing at this point. I'm not going to blame anyone for the onside kick yesterday. That's a surprise. Those things happen. It's like, okay, you get that one. But it feels like if there's a weak point, and every team has one. So this is not, again, I'm not pointing fingers at the Chiefs and saying they're going to lose the Super Bowl because of it. But special teams have been surprisingly sloppy this year.
Yeah, it's surprising, and it hasn't. I mean, you could say it cost them the Colts game, and hopefully it doesn't cost them much more
absolutely.
Because other teams have to not play through mistakes as well, and we're seeing that every team is going to go out there and make mistakes regardless of how good they are. And you look at the Buffalo Bills, still, figuring it out. And you had made the point before that they had not been playing all that impressively over the last few weeks, and it finally caught up to them.
Yeah, man, no one wanted to hear that when I tweeted it a couple weeks ago. I think it was in the Packers game. It was like, they're going to win this game, but they are not playing like themselves, and now they've dropped a couple in a row. But, again, I said it at the top of this interview, if you can win in November by 10 points, you feel really good. And the downside of that is you walk away from a game, and our final stock down is sometimes you walk away from a game that you win by 10 and you have some key questions in terms of player health moving forward. I mean, I'm not a rules expert, but the hit on Juju Smith-Schuster looked dirty to me. And I've heard from people I respect say, well, the receiver can't go in with his head like that. I have no idea how people are seeing it that way. That's the beauty of football. You and I can watch the same play and see it differently, but to the hit on Juju, the automatic fencing position that he was in before he hit the ground even, obviously he left the game and didn't come back. For like the next play to be also what I felt like was targeting or a targeted hit on MVS, maybe not targeting in terms of helmet to helmet, but a targeted type hit on MVS that was very hard. And then for Andre Cisco, the Jags safety, to celebrate that hit. Maybe he didn't know. I have seen people say his back was turned. He might not have known that he had hurt a second player. It wasn't a good look. And I think for Kansas City, more importantly, who cares what the Jags safety is doing, but more importantly, moving forward, how long are those players going to be out? Because I do think we all saw what happened to Tua, though you cannot rush Juju back. And I almost wish there was a way that if a player goes into that fencing position, they're out at least a week and maybe more. And I think there's a lot of hypocrisy in the NFL. There's a lot of hypocrisy, in NFL media. And if you're going to be outspoken about it when it's the Dolphins, you got to be the same when it's your team. So I'm hoping that Juju gets all the time he needs to be fully healthy before, like you said, as a human being, not even as a football player, as a human being, let's make sure he's right before he's back on the field in a position to take another hit.
Yeah. I had this conversation with Kent Swanson last night when we were watching the game because we kind of disagreed. And I don't think the more I've watched, especially the second replay of the hit on Juju, I'm not saying it was still helmet to helmet. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the second one bothered me more. The one on MVS bothered me more because I thought the intent was more to injure or to attack a defenseless player who's up in the air in a pretty exposed position. Felt like the one on Juju, from where the safety came through, and it's one thing to watch it in slow motion. When you watch it in full speed, safety's right there. I felt like I've watched 1,000 hits in college and the NFL in that same position where that safety lowers his head and really uses the crown of his helmet to drive into the wide receiver. I don't think Cisco did that on that play. It still ended up as helmet to helmet, but the last second you can kind of see him turn his head. Kent thought that was leading with the helmet. I thought he was just trying to protect himself a little bit. And it was just one of those, he's right there. Still a dirty hit, still should be a penalty because of the way and the result that it happened, what the NFL is trying to do. The way the rule states, that feels like an absolute flag should have been called. But for me, the intent of the player looking like he's trying to hurt someone, I thought it was worse on the MVS one because of how he kind of launched his body up at him.
Yeah.
Whereas the Juju one, it was just kind of like
bang, bang. Yeah.
Bang, bang. And he's right there. Like at some point, maybe not with that play, but if you're a safety and they throw the ball coming at you, the only thing you do is like literally get out of the way and not hit him because of where you're standing. You know what I mean? Like there's a point and there's situations on the field where it's so bang, bang. And as soon as the guy catches it on an over route, if the corner or the safety sitting right there, what's he do? He could take his knee out and he's going to blow his knee out. It's about the only other thing he could do, or try to contort his body to slow it down a little bit. But not that either one of them weren't great. I hated the reaction. And that's where like maybe the intent wasn't great. I didn't like the reaction on either one, but the second one for sure pissed off everybody. And a bunch of players talked about it after the game of the reaction didn't help the case of sometimes things happen in football. Then don't react like that because the player just got hurt.
And BJ, to that point, I was really surprised watching the San Francisco 49ers game Sunday night. Dre Greenlaw, a linebacker for the Niners, was ejected for a late hit. But the people in New York called and said, hey, that was dirty. He's ejected. But a Sunday afternoon game, and Cisco has 2 hits back to back, and there's one's not even penalized. I feel like the second one was almost as a makeup call. That surprised me. And I think I'm not going to go into like some wild conspiracy theory, but I do think there's something to a Sunday night game and a Sunday noon game where there's 12 games at noon and there's one at 7 o'clock and there's a lot more eyes on what happens. Whether I'm right or wrong about that, that's how I feel watching games sometimes, is that things get ignored in the early games because there's a crowd of things happening. But I hated the reaction from Cisco. And again, I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'm not a Jags fan. I'm just objective, just watching the games, and it felt kind of classless. And I'm one of those people. I actually, I enjoy the violence of football and the toughness that goes into not only delivering a hit but taking one. I don't want that taken from the game. But I don't think there's room for what happened Sunday.
Yeah. And again, Andy Reid had a few questions asked of him in the post-game presser, and what he had told the media that he had told the ref in that moment when the ref said he led with his shoulder. He was like, he doesn't lay, like, my player doesn't look like that unless his head was involved. So whether it's reviewable, whatever they want to do, you can't preach player safety. This is the hypocrisy side of it.
Absolutely.
You can't preach player safety and stand up and say you're doing all these things and then have plays like that happen and not have some, maybe refs get things wrong. They're human, understand, but have some checks and balances to make sure that a player that looks like he is doing this intentionally isn't have some sort of consequence in the moment before he does it again and somebody else gets hurt.
Absolutely. And again, I do think, I'm not trying to speak out of both sides of my mouth here. I do think there's something in football, like you said, with the first hit where it happens so quickly. But I do think that you have to be aware of intent and you have to be aware of where you're at. And you sure as hell want to make sure the next play isn't you launching yourself at someone. So I think that's what makes you wonder about the first play. Like you said, when you see the second hit and you see the celebration, it does make you wonder about the first one a little bit.
Yeah, I can't figure out the difference between what Juan Thornhill got flagged for earlier this year in the end zone, launching his body into a player who was in the air, breaking up a pass in the end zone, and then what we saw from Cisco in that game. So it's not consistent, and it's hard. This game's hard enough for defensive players and for offensive guys and all these guys and what they're doing. But for defensive players, for Juan Thornhill, who sees Cisco not get flagged for that, what's he thinking about when he got flagged? What are these guys supposed to do in some of these situations? And some they're unavoidable, like the one I was mentioning earlier on those over routes, cornerback, linebacker, whoever's just sitting there across the middle. And if it's going to be bang, bang, just because of the spacing and where you catch the pass, I don't know what you teach him or what you tell him to do. But all right, before we wrap this show up, Matt, we're going to talk about this probably every Monday going forward, because I had said that I was going to be an insufferable, and I'm normally pretty low key, kind of right down the middle, don't show a lot of emotion. I blame my baseball background, being a pitcher, not trying to show emotion. But I said I was going to be insufferable with all the shit that was being talked by AFC West fans with what happened over the offseason with the Chargers adding Khalil Mack and JC Jackson and Chandler Jones and Devontae Adams going to the Raiders and Randy Gregory and Russell Wilson and all this stuff. And I'm going to go and find all these comments and just put like a montage together.
You're probably gonna find some from me. So
hey, I'll find you. I'll put you in there too, because you're my friend. I'll even put your at NFL Draft Scout on the bottom, just so they make sure they know exactly where to find you. But is this a lesson for the NFL and free agency and thinking a few guys can go to a teams or a few different teams in the division to make a difference? Or is this the Chiefs are who they thought they were and they're better and they can adapt better than anyone else think? What side are you more on of? Is this a situation in the NFL, it doesn't work like this, or just don't screw with these people because they're the best and they're going to continue to be the best?
Can it be both? I do think it's both. So I've said a lot. I think AFC West teams loaded up to try to beat the Chiefs a certain way. And what the Chiefs did was say, well, we're not playing that way anymore. So good luck. Like, have fun with it. But I also think you can look at what the Broncos did. It just hasn't worked. And I liked the Nathaniel Hackett hire. I really did. You thought, coming from Green Bay, you only know what you know about assistants, right? And they get somewhere and you're like, oh, wait, never mind. That is not what I thought we were getting. The Broncos, I mean, those moves seemed safe. Packers offense coordinator, Russell Wilson, who one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 12 years. And it just hasn't. I think with the Raiders, it's more of the fact that roster's not good. And Mike Mayock and John Gruden hit on like one draft pick in 5 years or how many every years they were there. It was not good. And I continue to think the Chargers are just poorly coached. I think the talent's there. The Chargers are poorly coached. And here is the greatest mystery of the entire world to me. How has the Chargers medical staff not been completely flipped? Like, fire everyone, bring in new people who have different thoughts. They have to be, and I have no stats to back this up, the most injured team in the NFL. It feels like every Sunday it's like, well, they don't have Keenan Allen. They don't have Mike Williams. They don't have – it's always key players are hurt there. It's wild to me, and it's not just a Brandon Staley thing. It's been this way for a long time. So, it's a credit, like you said. Don't take it for granted how great Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Brett Veach. I mean, to have that continuity and for them to consistently know what they need to do is special. New England, San Francisco back in the day, Dallas back in the day, it's not something we see very often.
Yeah. And we know that as far as the AFC West goes, you got to start by winning your division. The game on Sunday night between the Chiefs and Chargers that got flexed to Sunday night is going to be even bigger than it was
It
before.
effectively decides the division.
The Chargers are in second place right now in the AFC West at 5-4.
Right.
Chiefs 7-2. If the Chiefs win that game, they're going to have a 3-game lead through 11 weeks in a division that everybody thought that there were people, Bart Scott, there were other people thought they were going to finish 4th. You didn't think they were going to finish 4th.
No.
There were people who thought they were going to finish dead last in the AFC.
I said 12-5, but I believe I thought they would be the second seed in the West. So I was wrong.
They're doing all this again. The other part, and I've had people throw this out on social media, so I'm not saying I stole this because I had never thought about this. The Chiefs have played a first place schedule every year that Patrick Mahomes has started in the NFL.
That's not fair.
They've won the division. They've won the division with Alex Smith. They've won it before he got here. So he is playing the division winners on those like 2 extra games within their schedule every single year. It's why they keep playing Buffalo. It's why they keep playing all these teams. Why they're playing New England every year. Back when Brady was in New England before he left. Like, it's not just that he's had the greatest start, and we're talking about the Chiefs' success and all things they're doing. They're doing it against the best schedule they can face every single year, and they still can't be stopped.
Well, you enjoy it.
I'm gonna enjoy this, Matt.
Nice.
You know Chiefs fans well enough. Your family's full of Chiefs fans. Like, we deserve this. Don't take it for granted.
Sunday night
don't
football.
Be spoiled about it, but enjoy it.
Sunday night football. My son's like, so when you were little, the 49ers were good? I was like, yeah, they were really good. And he's like, man, it's too bad they suck now. I was like, we played against each other in a Super Bowl recently. And he's just like going in, and it's like, okay, I get it. So I can't get away from it, but I'm excited for you guys. Again, best team in the AFC. You have the MVP at quarterback. It's been fun to watch, and I think Sunday against the Chargers is going to be a lot of fun as well. Hopefully both teams are a little more healthy, especially the Chargers, which is never going to happen. But I'm looking forward to the Mahomes-Herbert shootout.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good one. Again, Chiefs go to 8-2. The Chargers go to 5-5. If the Chiefs are able to win that one, you can not essentially call it, but can essentially call it
pretty close.
Yeah. And the more that I'm looking at this, the AFC schedule, we've talked so much about the Buffalo Bills, and now they're, in a race in the AFC East with the Jets and the Dolphins.
Third in the AFC East today.
Yeah. Crazy. But, as much as we've talked about an AFC championship between the Chiefs and the Bills, you imagine, I think we all know what the storyline is going to be, but Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins coming to Arrowhead to play in the AFC title game, and a season in which Tyreek Hill is probably going to break the receiving record, all kinds of receiving records. And the tandem between Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill breaking every tandem record ever set. And it's amazing they're doing it considering all their passes are underthrown. And it's not even like trying to make a slight at Tua. You cannot watch Tyreek Hill highlights this year and not be like, man, he would have an extra 50 yards a game if he wasn't waiting and having to, high point a lot of these passes. But Tua proved a lot of doubters wrong, just like the Chiefs. He's probably the only one that got more shit talked on him in the offseason that can go back and find all these receipts. Tua, the Dolphins as a whole.
Jalen Hurts, my guy Jalen Hurts.
I was talking with Trevor Sikkema last Friday on our KCSN update, and he was making the case that it's going to be really interesting if the Eagles continue to do what they're doing and continue to stay undefeated. Tyreek Hill breaks the rookie or the receiving record, and then Patrick Mahomes continues to be the best player in football, and talking about the MVP, because that's your conversation. I know you mentioned Justin Jefferson, obviously having a phenomenal season as well.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill breaks those records. You have to put him in that conversation, along with a quarterback leading an undefeated team and the best quarterback in the league. Now you're talking about Josh Allen.
That's why it's fun, right?
There you go.
I'm the Chiefs' schedule. They're gonna be favored in every game the rest of the way. I'm glancing at it right now. The Chargers aren't good. The Rams suck. We thought that was going to be like the game of the year. Chiefs-Rams. Nope. It's not going to be. The Chiefs-Seahawks might be the best game of the rest of the schedule at this point. Yeah, the Bengals in there, pretty good. Bengals are pretty good. That could be a good game.
Yes. All right. That is all we've got for today's episode of KCSN Update. Matt Miller, what are you working on now? What can people find on ESPN with you covering the NFL draft?
Mostly just sad that my son's reminding me my team's not any good right now. So we are working on our team needs is a big thing that we're focusing on right now. Every Tuesday and Friday, we have our NFL draft notebooks that come out with myself, Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Jordan Reed. So you can get caught up on all the things you missed. And then on Fridays, look ahead, the players we're watching, kind of the matchups we're looking for as we really dive into draft season as December gets closer here.
Love it. All right. We appreciate everybody for tuning in this episode, spending part of your day with us, whether it's on YouTube. And if it is, please hit that like and subscribe. If it's on the podcast, please follow us on your favorite podcast platform. But appreciate all you for supporting what we got going on. Plenty more coming up here on KC Sports Network. We'll see y'all later.